Today, I'm joined by two technology titans, Danny Varghese, president of Fortimize, and Dee Quang, vice president of data and analytics, also at Fortimize. We're going to be discussing the incredible opportunity that small and medium-sized insurance companies have before them to build a comprehensive data strategy and build their own competitive advantage.
Let's go.
Hi, I'm Miguel Edwards, and I'm the founder and CEO of FiveM Consulting LLC. We're a boutique management consulting shop focused on helping small and medium-sized insurance companies build lasting value and growth modernization strategies. This is our YouTube series, and we call it InsureTech Mastery, where we'll be discussing interesting trends in the insurance industry, basic risk management, and executive leadership principles. If you like those topics, hit the subscribe button below. Now, let's talk data strategy. Danny and Dee, thanks so much for being here with us. Ready to jump in?
Hey, Miguel, thanks for having me. Danny Varghese, president of Fortimize. My background, consulting my entire career. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but what I've really enjoyed is being able to see different businesses and how they execute, and then how do you marry technology to achieve business objectives or outcomes. So that's what I've been doing my entire career, various different technologies from Microsoft to Salesforce to thinking about infrastructure, enterprise architecture. Data is all the rage now.
My name is Dee Quang. I've been in the consulting space for nearly 2 decades now, and majority of that has been in data analytics. I've seen the evolution from BI when it was all encompassing of ETL, data warehousing, and the front end of business intelligence reporting, to see it evolve into modern data architecture, where you're seeing a lot of that move to the cloud, enabling advanced analytics on data lakes, and then now building data warehouses on the cloud to grow at scale with demand of your business.
FiveM Consulting and Fortimize, we do have a formalized partnership, and we are working together on a number of things together. But just a little bit of background around what Fortimize does, just 30 seconds or so that we can orient people on what Fortimize is all about.
At Fortimize, we are a professional services company, business and technology consulting, financial services focused, banking, insurance, asset management, private equity, real estate. Those are some big sub-verticals. Our focus is really to generate business outcomes, leveraging technology, so enabling our people and processes. About Fortimize specifically, we are 100% fully team owned. So every employee has private shares in our company, and why we did that and why it's very important. At the end of the day, we are a self-funded company. And so what we deliver to our clients matter. And if it's not of high quality and of high ethical standards, then that frankly hurts our reputation, which hurts our bottom line. And as shareholders in the company, there's nothing more important than our reputation, because that impacts directly our wallets. So I believe we have something special here. We have a company full of invested team members, not only invested in each other, but for our clients.
And I got to be honest with you, I've interacted with at least a dozen folks from your company in the short, 6 months or so of our partnership, and everything that you just described is true 100% through and through. I mean, I have worked with like 12 people from your company who I thought were all the president and CEO. It's absolutely amazing, the ownership vibe that comes from interactions with your team. So congratulations on having accomplished that. That's awesome. In my experience as a CIO of 2 different insurance companies, one of the biggest challenges that we've ever had was the fact that we've had multiple systems of record. And, you think about how insurance companies grow, and nowadays it's through acquisition. And so, insurance companies will go out and acquire a company, and you think that there is an integration or a consolidation of systems. Often not, right? There's a lot of reasons why there's things in the way. So what we end up with is this kind of dispersion of data all over the place. And we know intuitively that the best way to maximize data as an asset is to really kind of think about that data aggregation and making sure that you've got all of your data standardized and all in one place. And so I think about that challenge from an insurance perspective. What thoughts do you guys have on how insurers should be thinking about that dispersion challenge, and how should we be thinking about data aggregation as perhaps maybe even the first step?
When I hear that, I think of the word data fragmentation of the concept. And so let me put it in terms, my brain thinks of things in simplicity, and I like using analogies. So I think about a house, and a house has many rooms. And oftentimes when we need to find things within our house, We need to know where that item or object is stored. How do we access it? What's around it? And how do we get to it quickly? The other day, I was trying to find a specific tool for my car in the garage. So I knew it was in the garage, but I didn't know exactly where it was. And so I went into the garage and I said, oh, where is this? And I searched all over, couldn't find it, realized it was probably somewhere up top where I put it on one of the shelves. So I actually grabbed a ladder. So now I'm using another tool to get to that. I spent about 45 minutes looking for this thing and I finally found it. And many of our, call it rooms in our business are the same way. Data, when we think about fragmentation, data can be fragmented by things like location, systems, and applications. And so over time, whether it be through M&A, those locations, systems, and data grow. And they become fragmented. And then what happens at the end of the day for our business folks, it takes them longer to find what they're looking for. Right. And sometimes if it exists in multiple places, they might not trust the quality or accuracy of that data. And so that's kind of why data fragmentation is a challenge and how it's formed. But what do we do about it? I have a concept to call it 3 different things you could do with it: assess, map, and govern. So first, assess what the data, your house looks like. Where does the data sit? Where are the different locations? Where are the different systems that are using it? Map it all together. How do all these things connect? Are they connected? Do you really need it? And then finally, govern. Once you have all that assessed and mapped, where is the one place you can go for that data? And then how do you integrate the different sources together?
I love that analogy. And by the way, just furthering your analogy and looking for the tool, how often do we spend all that time looking for the tool? We get there and it was the wrong freaking tool anyway. And I'm talking, if I bring the analogy to the data, right? We spent all this time looking for data and the data didn't tell us what we were looking for anyway, right? So it was wasted time.
I like to think about it as sometimes helping our client think about the efficiencies that can be gained if they know where their data is. Imagine your data analyst or your business user is trying to understand a policy to be given to your customer. And in understanding that policy, they want to see what claims have this person filed in the past. Now, if your data is fragmented in various systems, you have to go to what we call swivel chair to understand where the data is, who this customer is within your policy holder systems, how many claims that they did within their claim system, and then be able to then say, hey, how do we even earn the business of this customer, and go into the marketing database to understand how do we even get this customer, right? So there's fragmentation of data. And at the end of the day, how do you help your customer get to the right data at the right time to make the right decision? And in doing so, in looking at that, right, I like to say when you look at a reference architecture, when you see your data sources on the left, you see your architecture that's in the middle of how you design the data aggregation, how you centralize the data. And then on the right side, you have your consumers and how they interpret the data. I like to say start from right to left. So being able to merge your policy data with your claims data in a simple report, generate the hype with your customers, and then executives will say, hey, where is it that we can gain ROI if we standardize these policies, right? And then you start to create this data gravity, if you will, this momentum for moving forward with this data approach that now allows you to integrate and aggregate into what I would call a source of truth then at that point.
I love that. You know, you were just talking, Dee, about a lot of things that I might suggest are part and parcels of the benefit that comes out of a digital strategy, right? When you start talking about all of those different touch points, and you're smiling because I think and there's this mistake that you're smiling about that I've made once as a CIO. I made it only one time though, so I'm happy to report that, where I thought that I could launch a digital strategy without necessarily focusing first on making sure my data house was in order. And then so what ended up happening is I had all these cool kind of digital endpoints, but there was nothing in the middle. and I realized after the fact that I've got all of these challenges now. So talk to me about the place for a data strategy as part of a digital strategy. And I'm going to be a little bit leading in my question here. It would be interesting for us to have a little bit of a conversation about why it is that within the insurance industry, and I'm not saying the insurance industry is alone in this, but why is it that we have such a hard time putting the right level of emphasis and investment on data when it's what runs our entire industry?
Very great point, Miguel, in terms of why are organizations not investing in true data strategy and really getting their data house in order and to take advantage of data. As we all know, over the last few years, data has exponentially grew. 90% of the world's data, according to your post, right, that's out there, has generated over the last few years. And being able to leverage that data for that strategic advantage is not something that a lot of organizations are taking advantage of. And the reason is when you try to build a data warehouse, when you try to aggregate all of your data, there's a lot of data that is at your organization that you don't understand what is out there. You have a department, for instance, let's go back to our policies and claims. You have a department that's managing all of the policies. You have a department that's managing all of the claims. And then you have a department that's managing all of your marketing materials. It's fragmented, right? And then now trying to get all of those people into a room, spending time and energy to say, hey, how can I relate my data from claims to policies to billing to finance, put it all in one place so that I can get accurate reporting? It's a lot of time that we're spending getting these people together. And sometimes they don't see the value because they're talking about the process and not about the outcomes.
Interesting.
So really driving at the outcome, again, if you can start small and say, look at the value of this report, one report that is helping drive decisions for your policies to generate that buzz, for them to see the true ROI on it, then work backwards, right? Then to say, this is what you can achieve by getting here. So sometimes they're looking more at, oh man, this process is very long. This process is very tedious. I'm not getting value out of these meetings. You need to get into these meetings and drive it from the outcome. What are you trying to achieve? And really go back to the business strategy. How is the data strategy informing your business strategy? What data points are you trying to use to drive your business strategy? Why are you using data? What is your competitor doing with data? How can you use advanced analytics to your advantage? Meaning predictive and prescriptive abilities.
Danny, along those lines, I want to throw something at you because what Dee was just talking about was fascinating, starting with that outcome. And one of the hypotheses that I have that I'd love for you to validate is in your experience, do you believe that executive teams really think about data outcomes specifically? Do they think about the art of the possible in terms of what could we do from a product and services perspective? What could we do in terms of achieving competitive advantage using data as a tool, as an asset? Do you feel like that conversation is being had at a sufficient level in the boardroom?
I don't think so, Miguel. I think it happens in pockets, and this is related to two concepts here that I want to bring together. One, I actually think any technology initiative should be rooted in one simple question for all executives, which is, what are the business questions you're trying to answer? And that could be at the organizational level. It could also be at the department level. An organization has metrics around their people, their customers, their sales, and frankly, their profitability. And so for each of those areas, they have questions they want to answer. How is my customer satisfaction score? How is my EBITDA? What is it today? What does the next year look like? Those are the questions they ask. And oftentimes the answers to those tie to cumbersome processes, whether it be manual or crunching in spreadsheets, et cetera. And so when you look at those questions, the next question is, okay, how are we going to get there? And so that's part one. I don't think we really focus on what are the business questions you're trying to answer. Secondly, when you say, well, why doesn't it get into an executive boardroom? It comes down to, frankly, ownership. Let me go a little bit back to the house analogy I made. I've got 3 kids. And when I'm at home and my wife and I are talking about cleaning up the house, typically that falls on my wife and I. We're cleaning, we're doing the dishes, and frankly, my kids are young. And so we have to tell them, hey, listen, this house, it's for all of us. And keeping the house clean doesn't fall on just mom and dad. It actually falls on each of you as well. There has to be an ownership. And so what we're trying to teach them, and frankly, we're talking to business executives, is there's a concept of data stewardship. The word steward really means manager or owner. And the misnomer, the myth is that these data stewards and all the people holding the data sits in IT. That's a fallacy. And so when it sits in IT, then the importance gets diminished. And my argument is that data stewards should sit throughout the entire business, because every leader in a business area have questions they need to answer. Mm-hmm. And so that stewardship should sit there. So let's just give an example from a past client. When we were talking to them about pricing policies and quoting policies, that process to automate, yes, IT is helping, but what are the prices? What are the quotes? How often that gets updated and who owns the central part of that data actually sits with the business.
Right.
So data stewardship is a concept where it's not just IT owning it, but it's the business owning it. And frankly, to own it so that they can answer questions that the executive team has about their business.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You're pointing at another topic that comes up and for me gets very, very little attention as part of the overall data strategy, and that's the governance part of all of this. When you say data steward, I think about how that falls into overall data governance, and included in that, obviously, we have data privacy, we have data security, you have the data governance piece, you have the data literacy, the change management, you've got all of that stuff. Then throw analytics on top of that all. Talk to me a little bit about your approach when we engage customers, when you engage your clients, to really helping them understand the importance that needs to be put on establishing data governance and an actual data governance strategy. And I'll ask you the question, should that be in place before the technology?
I couldn't agree more that data governance is a real big issue today. And when you think about data governance, if you think about all of the regulations and compliance that is in insurance, and you think about things like CCPA, the California Protection Act, and you think about different states that are starting to have their own policies, and for us to be able to build architecture and be able to be responsible for the customer's data, it's very important that we think about governance. Is how do you get to the data? Do you understand what the data mean? Can you trust the data that's out there? Can you find the data? If I was a customer for an insurance company, and I were to go out there and say, hey, I moved on to a different insurance company. I want you to wipe out all of my information. I don't want you to share my information anymore. I don't want you to, anybody at your organization to see my information. Can you be able to identify who Dee Quang is in your system and be able to either obfuscate all of the data, get rid of all of the data, or maintain it in a way that it's not pointing to me if I were to call in and say, what information you still have about me, right? So being able to understand where data governance is and being able to comply to that is a part of the overall data strategy.
Right.
So trying to say, hey, where am I trying to go? What are the policies that I'm trying to abide by? Privacy, security, making sure I'm not part of, when you become a part of a data breach and then customers are concerned about their data, what are you going to do for all of that? You have to have a response in place.
Along with CCPA, we also have the European corollary of that as well, GDPR. And, that we talk about this kind of constantly evolving landscape and of shifting requirements. One of the things that I've been part of is working for two different life insurance companies is even on beyond just even privacy, you've even got accounting standards that change the way our data models need to look. So for example, FASB is re-architecting how life insurance contracts are valued using a concept called LDTI, long duration targeted improvements. So that's going to shift the entirety of how we manage data from a life insurance contract perspective. The European corollary of that is IFRS 17. And so insurance companies now are grappling with the need to take advantage of flexible data architectures, which they didn't have the forethought, and I don't think any of us did really, right? The forethought to make sure that flexibility was architected into our overall stack. So with that, how can insurers, now that we've got the benefit of hindsight and appreciation for this problem, and my guess is that the change is going to come at an ever faster rate in terms of what regulators are wanting and the privacy laws of valuing, et cetera. How do we get our customers to think about flexible data architectures? What does that even look like? What does that feel like? How do we have that conversation?
Miguel, you brought up a very good point, and I don't have the exact terminologies with me, but where data is evolving right now it's the age of metadata. It's managing the data about data at this point. So there are tools that are coming out there. Again, the tool is not the end-all be-all. Here at Fortimize, we firmly believe technology is only the enabler of your people and your process. But however, establishing a tool that is out there, like a data governance tool, like Elation, to be able to manage all your metadata, to understand how your data is well connected, it allows you to be agile and nimble to be able to develop new models, new data models on the fly. Meaning you're able to take a look at your metadata and it's on read. In the old days, when you have a flat file, you have 10 columns. If you add an 11th column, it's going to break all of the integrations. It's going to break getting data into your system. These days, if you're managing the metadata by itself and you're reading the 10 columns, and even if you have 100 columns on that file, it's always going to read those 10 columns and it's not going to break that process.
Got it. That makes sense. That Dee actually is probably the most eloquent way I've heard that explained, because trying to have that conversation with a non-technical person is very difficult. And I feel like I can take exactly what you said and explain that to non-technical folks. So Danny, kind of a similar line of thinking, but I want to expand the dialogue a little bit, because, you mentioned when you talked about Fortimize that you guys are not only in insurance, but you're in wealth management, you're in banking, you're in real estate. What lessons can you draw from some of the other industries that Fortimize operates in that you think that the insurance CIO or insurance CFO that's listening to this says, you know what, I could really use some of that analogous advice?
Regardless of what sub-industry in financial services, the challenge is the exact same thing. All those sub-industries are beholden to technologies that are very product-centric, whether it be checking and savings account in banking, whether it be policy-centric systems in insurance, or building-centric data in real estate. All those systems were product-centric. And so when the companies layered on people and processes on top of that, that was the focus. We've seen now a shift here in probably the last 10, 20 years, and now in the future, everything has to be about the customer, the client, the member, the policyholder. And it's about enabling success for them. And that's going to be the great differentiator. One of the things I actually learned from you, Miguel, is that within insurance, policies and ways to generate revenue are becoming more and more commoditized. At the end of the day, it's about the end user experience. And so going back to the lesson that I see across the board is, what are the business questions you're trying to answer? What is that ultimate end user experience you're trying to give for your customers? And then work backwards. Work with the outcome in mind. And when it comes to data, what type of systems are you going to use and data you're going to pull from to, one, answer those questions and engage in your policyholders, for example, insurance, in a more meaningful manner. One of the examples, we had a client that was a specialty insurance client. Very interesting, because when we ran a digital transformation with them and eventually got the data into Salesforce, in this example, and a system of engagement, they had a whole new insight they'd never had before, which were they were able to see geographically the types of policies that people had in different regions, and to be able to see what the margins they were making on those policies by region. And what that told them was, hey, are we pricing this appropriately? What is our pricing strategy here in different areas? What are our best performing regions? What are our worst, and why? And also, could our engagement or experience with those policyholders be a reason for that? And so that's kind of start with the end in mind and work backwards. That's the advice I would give across all. And then the other thing I would say is there's the adage of how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. Many folks think that these digital transformations or these data initiatives are going to take 3-5 years. Let me build out a roadmap. Can't do that anymore. It's got to be much faster. What does the next 1 year look like? How do we get there quickly? And then let's not let perfection be the enemy of good.
Yeah.
Let's also not let good be the enemy of good enough. Just get something out there, iterate, be agile.
I love that last piece, and that is that perfect is the enemy of good is to me the number one impediment often that stands in front of a lot of IT projects, which is where we've got to document the requirements until until our eyes are blue, and then by the time we get into development, the technology has shifted, the user requirement has changed, and all, et cetera, et cetera. But with that flexibility, gentlemen, what do you guys see on the horizon for data? Because one of the things as I start thinking about some of the big investments that some of my clients, some of our shared clients are making, I start thinking about some of that investment in these new technologies. To what extent do you think that the technologies, the software vendors, us as implementers, to what extent do you think that we've got enough of a future focus to make sure that the just good enough today isn't going to preclude future opportunity? How do we need to be thinking about that?
One of the things that I hardly see a lot of organizations are doing is taking advantage of advanced analytics at their organization. And then don't get me wrong, in order to take advantage of advanced analytics, you have to have a strong data foundation. But imagine this. Imagine in the insurance industry, you have a lot of claims that are being processed. And instead of calling the customer and trying to get all of the information, trying to get their point of view on what happened within the accident between two auto claims, right? Imagine you just took pictures or there's a video and you send it into your system, and that is processing and being trained a model to say, hey, this accident, this car has a rear damage. This car has a front damage. When this car got rear-ended. So you get 80% of your information automated into your system for your claim adjuster to say, all right, this is pretty good for us to just mark that, hey, who's at fault? And let's start processing this claim, right? So that's taking advantage of the advanced analytics in terms of processing unstructured data, which is the images and the videos, to give you meaning out of it and to get you 80% of the way there. Can you imagine the time that's saved with all of these claim adjusters and such? So being able to take advantage of advanced analytics is one horizon. The other horizon is leveraging Gen AI. I know Gen AI is a buzz right now. And again, you have to have a strong foundation before you can get to advanced analytics, and beyond advanced analytics, also Gen AI. But Gen AI has the capability of generating documents for you, being able to detect changes within the document. So imagine if you're detecting change in your customer information that leads to, hey, there's a new compliance law that came out in Illinois. Is all of my customers compliant with that new law in Illinois, right? It enables you to be able to digest all of that information quickly and identify where are all of the things that I should look for and be able to react to.
As you're talking through that as an opportunity, what has occurred to me is that I have yet been on a data transformation project where the focus, or not the focus, but a focus was on unstructured data. Because everything you were just talking about and all that opportunity that you just described lies within unstructured data. Yet whenever I go into a data project, it's always columns and rows, right? It's always, it's always data structures and table structures and relations and linkage and primary keys and all of these things, right? But oh my God, insurance companies have to be the largest purveyors of unstructured data next to Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, right? I mean, you just think about all of the artifacts that are sent in during the during the value chain of an insurance contract. Why? Like, what do you think is missing in the thought process, gentlemen, when we don't have that conversation around unstructured data?
I'll take it even one step further, Miguel, and you're hiring all of these data scientists, which are equipped with PhDs, and they're demanding big bucks. And you have them join your organization, your insurance organization. They're an actuarian where they can detect the risk associated with giving a policyholder X policy, right? But instead of allowing them to do what they're good at and be able to build models around that risk mitigation, they're actually spending time crunching numbers because the data is not all in one place where they can trust it. And they're pulling data out into Excel. We all have been there, an organization where it's very Excel heavy for them to do their analysis, only to push it back into the system, then to be able to get their analytics. So why we haven't been able to harness the power of advanced analytics is more often than not, a lot of the organizations' foundational data elements, a data warehouse, a data lake, isn't in place. Mm-hmm. Speaking back to Danny's tool finding analogy, imagine you throwing your tools everywhere within your garage, which is a place that holds all of your tools, but not being able to tag, hey, I put the hammer on the upper shelf, right? And I'm organizing the upper shelf. I put my screwdrivers on the bottom shelf. So think about it the same way as a data lake. If you keep on throwing data in there and not tagging, using the technology to tag where exactly am I putting my data points, it then becomes a data swamp. Yeah. And then people aren't able to use it. People don't know where the data resides, don't know who to go to the data, going back to data stewards and data owners to say, hey, can I trust this data? Is this data accurate? Is it coming from the claims management system? Is it coming from the billing system? Has people transformed the data to a point now where we can't trust the data? Mm-hmm. So it all is connected in terms of having an end-to-end process, but and starting with your data strategy to say, hey, here's all of the pieces that have to be in place: data governance, implementation, architecture, data engineering, and then data science. Here's how all of them fit together. And then now let's execute one step at a time.
Right. Let me close out here with a final question. We talked about advanced analytics. We talked about, unstructured data. Danny, what do you see on the horizon? You guys eat, live, breathe, sleep technology. Obviously, you got to understand your business partners as well, but your focus is providing that technology value to your business partners. What do you see on the horizon that we need to be thinking about as we think about our strategies for 25, 26, 27? What are you watching out for? And especially if you're finding opportunities out there that are going to be transformational even for your business, what are you thinking about that we should be focused on?
Yeah, I think it's really all about speed, but with the speed comes caution. And where I'm going with this is AI is all the buzz, but there's also a lot of concern about using AI responsibly. And that is all tied to the data that the AI is being fed. And so going back to, there is going to be leaps and bounds, and we're seeing this in advancement in technology and how companies use that technology to meet their end consumer demands. But there's also equally amount of concern about using that responsibly. And going back to our data conversation, data fragmentation, data quality, lack of data governance, a lack of focus on a strategy. If we move too fast and don't get those foundational pieces in order, the end result can be and could potentially be irresponsible.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of when we talk about what is the future, what's ahead in data, that's what's top of mind for us. And so going back to, I love using the house analogy, right? I mean, now houses are being asked to be built faster,
mm-hmm.
but let's not skip on the quality.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not skip at focusing on the foundation. Let's also make sure that we keep the house clean as we build it bigger.
Yeah.
And so all those things I think is on the horizon for data.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's a great cautionary tale, man, as we think about things. And we all know that bad data is always going to be the cause of a lot of really irresponsible and wacky things. And so, yeah, no, that makes good sense. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for this time commitment. Thank you for taking the time to be on this session, for all of the knowledge that you shared. And also thank you for your time and being with us. I hope you enjoyed this content. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and a subscribe. If there's a particular topic you'd like me to address, please leave it in the comments. Until then, keep your data squared away, and we'll see you next time.